Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician, and this is Holomancer.
Also welcome the daring reporter Dora.
We are infinitely grateful that we have another opportunity to see you all again.
Today we will make a short review of the most interesting cards from the Return to Naxxramas mini set.
We will analyze the cards and determine their potential power level according to classic Hearthstone standards.
By the way, we made a separate video about the hidden balance and patterns of the game, which continues to be maintained despite power creep. In this video, we also talk about the logic of our approach to card evaluation. Don't miss it if you haven't seen it yet.
Let's begin with one of the most promising cards in this expansion. This tool very clearly demonstrates the modern approach to card balancing. We also talked about this topic in our previous video.
The new Mind Seer spell is almost a copy of Touch of the Naxxramas for the Warlock. The card allows you to deal really a lot of damage in just 1 mana. At first glance, this tool looks broken, but at the same time it corresponds to the modern logic of creating cards. This spell has a situative feature. In order to get value in the maximum volume, you will have to fulfill the conditions, which will create some difficulties for you. Moreover, in some matches you will be forced to use the card without activating an additional effect. In this case, your minimum value will be 1 mana, which is equivalent to using Arcane Shot. But if the conditions are met, your maximum value will increase several times, since you activate the Dark Bomb effect. The nominal cost of this effect is 2 mana. Add to that the extra mana crystal for stacking effects and you get a maximum value of 4 mana crystals. If we take 2 scenarios into account and divide their average value by the cost of the card, we get a utility ratio of 2.5. In other words, on average, you will get almost 3 times more benefit according to the classical basis. From a formal point of view, this corresponds to the modern Hearthstone standard. But since the difficulty level of getting maximum value is easy, in most matches your value will be maximum. But don't forget that, just like in classic Hearthstone, developers have to increase the power level of some tools for certain classes or certain strategies in order to make them work effectively.
Now let's move on to the worst cards. Dark Fallen Shadow is the brother of Restless Mummy. The card also has a situational feature. Rush mechanics are most often used to deal damage to opponents' creatures, just like spells. In the worst case scenario, you will be able to deal only 3 damage, but if the condition is met, you will be able to deal 3 more damage. Overall, the card has a very low utility ratio even by classic standards.
Mistake is a new amalgam with no abilities, but with perfect stats for a 1 mana minion. Despite the low utility ratio, all amalgams found their place in competitive decks.
Before we continue, we would like to express our deep gratitude to our patrons. Without your support we won't be able to create new videos. Dear friends, we will be grateful to you for any help. Like, comment, repost, subscribe to the channel and of course sponsorship.
The prototype for the tier reality spell is Primordial Glyph, but the mage's new tool has lost its most important feature, the discover keyword. Getting 2 completely random spells for 4 mana, even with a reduced cost, doesn't provide too many benefits, at least on paper.
Plague Eruption, also a situational card. In the worst case scenario, you'll cast Volcanic Potion, the effect of which corresponds to the classical basis of the game, or you'll cast Excavated Evil, if you manage to activate the bonus effect of course. Both effects have too little advantage by today's standards.
Frostfin Chomper is able to bring a lot of value when the condition is met. In fact, this is an example of a broken card, which is enclosed within a specific strategy. Priest got some very strong aggressive tools. Rotting Necromancer has the failure factor. In the worst case, your minimum value will correspond to the cost of the card, but in case of success, you will not only pick up something useful from the bottom of the deck, but also activate the Mind Blast effect. In classic Hearthstone, each opponent's life point is equivalent to half a mana crystal. Since we are considering 2 scenarios, this has a negative impact on the overall utility ratio.
Flesh Shaper is a summoner card. Once again, the Hearthstone team has created a very strong card that is balanced by limitations. In cases of non-compliance with the conditions, you will receive too little benefit, and in cases of success, you will receive too much value. As a result, we have an average power level of the card.
The new Hunter's Secret is an improved version of the classic Snipe. In the worst case, you will deal 4 damage to your opponent's minion. At best, you will kill a creature with 1 life point, and spawn 3 zombies. Since the effect is delayed, each additional creature will also have a reduced cost for stacking.
The rogue spell Ransack is capable of dealing 1 damage, or 4 damage when an additional effect is activated. A certain strategy will be simple enough to fulfill this condition.
The Life from Death spell is printed to replace composting. Aggro decks will find it easiest to activate an effect that allows you to draw 3 cards for only 1 mana. On average, your utility ratio will be almost 2 points. But if the cost of the card decreases, your utility ratio will increase to 5.
Lost Exarch has an extremely interesting description, since your maximum profit will directly depend on your opponent. If the enemy eliminates the creature, you most likely won't get any extra value, but if your opponent ignores this card, you can summon up to 7 minions with Rush at a discount. Since the effect has a delayed activation, the cost of stacking effects will be slightly reduced to 0.7 mana crystal. The transformation mechanic continues to evolve. The Discover ability gave the effect additional value.
Suspicious Peddler does the same things as Suspicious Usher. Even if your opponent guesses the card you have chosen, your advantage will not be affected.
Calamity's Grasp is an uncommon weapon with a card generating option but with a delayed benefit. Any weapon, in most cases, allows you to get an increased amount of benefits compared to other cards, but dealing damage to your enemy creatures will take away your hit points. This fact balances this type of cards.
Spectral Trainee has something in common with Deathchiller. This card has combo potential and needs additional actions to activate the effect. Each spell cast activates the effect of Arcane Explosion. If you cast 3 spells, your benefit will be 11 mana crystals, but you will need to invest additional mana to cast these spells. In my opinion, most classic AoE effects show low effectiveness in a modern Hearthstone.
The new warrior spell is very similar to Instructor Fireheart. In the worst case, you will only get 1 card, but with enough luck, you can get 3 creatures or even more. On paper, the effect looks quite promising.
Stitched Creation is able to get a few buffs that will allow him to turn into a creature with 10/10 stats, but at the same time, the card is well balanced. If you apply only one of the modifiers, you will get a creature that matches the classic base, but is not up to modern standards. If all conditions are met, you will spawn a monster.
We hate Death Beetle. Formally, in cases of non-compliance with the condition, you will get an almost useless creature. But it's fairly easy for a druid to get past the mana limit. If this happens, the effect of the card will get out of control. Your maximum value will be equivalent to summoning a minion for 10 mana and casting Pyroblast. Such cards should not exist.
Fellscale Evoker is another situational card with variable value. Your benefit will directly depend on the demon you are lucky to call from the deck. For example, if you summon Morgforge Fiend, your maximum nominal benefit will be 20 mana crystals.
Rivendare Warrider is another card that can kill an opponent in 1 turn. To do this, you need to invest 24 mana crystals throughout the game to summon very weak creatures. When all conditions are met, you will receive an effect that we estimated at 50 mana crystals. In classic Hearthstone, this is the equivalent of using 3 Pyroblast and 30 mana crystals. But it will be extremely difficult to fulfill these conditions by traditional methods. For this reason, this legendary card creates a huge space for the creativity of the players.
Next in line is another legendary card. The Death Knight finally got his colossal creature. Frost Queen Syndragosa is capable of destroying 2 enemy minions, which is the equivalent of using 2 Assassinates. But unlike the classic spell, you won't be able to destroy a creature with Divine Shield and Bypass Taunt. For this reason, we have lowered the cost of this effect a bit. The card's main advantage is its relatively stable value in most scenarios.
Trinket Tracker is a relative of Knight of Anointment. Nothing special. The card has a good effect and a fairly high utility ratio. But the usefulness of the card will depend on the effectiveness of 1 mana spells.
The prototype of Knight of the Dead is Ornery Tortoise. The card is also situational. To get maximum value, you must hold the card in your hand until the 7th turn. Otherwise, you will receive more damage than benefits. Despite this, this minion can also find a place in aggressive decks.
In addition to the colossal creature, the Death Knight received its own location. The Construct Quarter is designed to transform your frail ghouls. Sacrifice a creature that should die anyway and you will get a very strong minion with the board control function. Long-term delayed action affects the cost of stacking effects. In our opinion, this card looks very strong.
The Purator is the brother of the Curator. But unlike its relative, which draws 3 cards from the deck, the new card is able to draw up to 10 cards for 5 mana, and in addition has very good stats. The card is completely broken, but Blizzard has limited its effect within a particular strategy.
The new Warlock spell is nothing more than a copy of the classic Soul of the Forest spell. The nominal cost of this effect is 6 mana, but the Hearthstone team suggests that you use this effect for only 2 mana. This is another example of power creep in the game, but the developers have again limited the use of this tool to only certain strategies. This spell could be the key to a new token archetype.
The new Priest spell is both a removal and one of the best healer tools. Let's say you destroy a creature with 6 hit points. This would be equivalent to casting the classic Holy Light spell, which has a nominal cost of 3 mana. If you have at least 2 creatures on the board, the effect will automatically apply 3 times. Of course, your real benefit will depend on the number of hit points restored. In the worst case, you will only restore hit points to your hero, but even in this case, you will get a lot of benefits.
Cold Storage is one of my favorite cards in this mini set. The Morabi effect will finally see the game. The spell will not only allow you to hold back the opponent's creature for 1 turn, but also apply the Seance effect. An important advantage of the card is the absence of conditions.
It's time for the last card. Thaddeus is another reincarnation of Aviana. From the point of view of traditional ways of playing, the card can only be useful for druids, as they have the ability to ignore mana limits. But other classes have enough cards that allow you to summon Thaddeus with special methods. In this case, this legendary card will allow you to realize an almost limitless amount of value throughout the turn, but achieving this result in the standard format is not so easy. In the wild format, this tool can be used in the Big Priest archetype. In any case, the developers have created another card to test our creativity.
In general, we get more and more powerful cards but with restrictions to activate additional effects. This feature partially negates their power. As you can see, most cards get about the same utility ratio. Despite this, the complexity of fulfilling the conditions still remains uneven. The difficulty level indicator for getting the maximum value has become key to modern Hearthstone. Some strategies have enough synergies to get the most value out of a card in the shortest amount of time, while other decks have a harder time doing so since the synergies are not strong enough.
What do you think of the modern approach to Hearthstone card design?
What do you think of the new cards?
Are you impressed with the new mini-set?
Share your opinion in the comments, and also take part in the survey on our community tab.
Dear friends, thanks to each of you for being with us today.
We hope to be able to get in touch in the future.
Take care of yourself.
And never give up.
Job's done.